I think about shoes, right? Tying our shoes. We keep asking God to help us tie our shoes. And he's like, no, I gave you hands for that. Ask me for more stuff. Ask me for greater. Ask me for things that I didn't give you the ability to do on your own. And then let me partner with you.
What's up, guys? I'm Austin.
I'm Colin.
And I'm Sean. Welcome to the Three Cheese Podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Three Cheese Podcast. We're taking a deep dive with entrepreneurs into the bold and risky leaps of faith that were pivotal on their journeys to where they are today. Today's guest is Mignon Francois, a wife, mother, grandmother, and talented baker. She's the founder and CEO of the Cupcake Collection, an award-winning bakery with locations here in Nashville and her hometown of New Orleans. In this podcast, you'll hear her tell stories of the hardships she's experienced in life and how entrepreneurship not only helped her survive, but thrive. We did experience some technical difficulties with the video recording of this podcast, so at one point the video recording will cut out for an extended period of time and then resume. Please rate, review, and subscribe and enjoy this episode of the Three Cheese Podcast. All right, so thank you so much for being on the podcast. Like, you didn't have to be here. You really didn't know what this was. It's kind of our first season, but I'll give you a little scope. We've talked already to about 4 or 5 other entrepreneurs in town who have all different varying types of businesses, and we've really been trying to kind of talk about things that maybe don't normally get talked about when we talk about entrepreneurship, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe not just, the typical, like, we did this and we made this business deal and we did this, but more like these moments, these leaps of faith that we've had to take that were gut-wrenching, or we were, having a panic attack, or we were risking it all.
Yeah, we were uncertain about what those next steps were.
And we're trying to hear from other entrepreneurs about that because we've experienced it together. Us 3 own this company, and we've had multiple times where we look at each other and go like,
I don't know,
but I believe it's the right decision, and let's just go for it. And it feels like jumping off a cliff is kind of what we've likened it to. And we know your story is applicable to this. And so we've just been learning so much and having a great time doing it. And so we're so thankful that you're here.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to keep my promise to God. So thank you.
And what was your promise to God?
I promised God that if he would make me successful, I would tell anybody who would listen about what they could do if they believe.
Love it.
All right. Great. Thanks for being on the show.
Mic drop. Done. That's all we need.
Yeah, I know. That's
a great start.
That's so awesome.
A good start.
That would be hilarious if you're like going through and it's like, why is this one only like 15 seconds?
She just came in for like 5 minutes and then left.
That's awesome, and that just shows like your heart of the matter. So let's start with, like, when did this passion for entrepreneurship in you start?
I think I always had it. I think I always wanted to do it. I think that I had the wrong concept. I think I was worried about failing. And what I learned after I became successful is that I was worried about succeeding. Because when you succeed, you have to get up every day.
Yeah.
You got to go when you don't feel like it. You got to show up when you're tired, or maybe even when you messed up and you have to go make that right. And what I learned is that we aren't generally afraid of failure, because if we thought it might fail, we wouldn't do it anyway. So it's the fear of success that ends up holding us back. And I think that was the thing that changed it for me. I had a lot of business ideas. This wasn't my first one. It was just the one that I stuck to.
Talk to me about some of those other ideas.
Love to know.
Yeah, so in my former life, I was a photographer. I have a degree in journalism and photography, mass media, and psychology. I was going to school to be a doctor. I couldn't apply the science to the human body, but I later learned that I would be able to apply it to food. And that's where I discovered that every stupid thing you've ever had to do is taking you from where you are to where it is that you.
It's not a setback. It's a setup.
Yeah, it's like those things were not mistakes; they were necessary.
Yeah.
And so I had a business documenting babies coming into the world. So couples would hire me to be on call for when the baby came, and I would go into the delivery room, and I would just fall into basically the woodwork and shoot those images. What I would do is I would make a front page story. So I would write the story of the way the room sounded,
Whoa.
and all that kind of stuff. And then I would lay it out, and then I would print it on newsprint.
And you would give it to them?
Mm-hmm. I would give it to them. That was in my former life. And then I had this other idea. I'm really good with my hands, and I'm really crafty. And I love weddings. I could go to a wedding every day, all the time. I just came from the most epic wedding. It was my son's wedding.
Nice.
Of course.
I love weddings. So I used to make veils for brides, like custom handmade veils for brides. At my first business, me and my cousin were joking about this the other day. My first business was making cookies with my cousin, and we would just go knocking door to door selling our cookies. And
Did you sell them? You were the first.
sold 'em.
Were you better than the Girl Scouts?
No one's better than the Girl Scouts. Nothing's better than the Girl Scouts. I mean, we sold out, and so maybe that's where I got that.
That's awesome.
Get that first little.
You got the taste of selling out of the sweets.
Yes,
Man,
yes.
when you're a kid, you have such an advantage because people are like, oh, of course. Like when I was a kid, I used to sell Christmas cards door to door that I made myself, and they were just like, "You sweet little thing, like I'll buy that from you."
That's awesome.
I've that door to door salesman.
Yeah. And so
Life is awesome.
We were two little girls knocking on doors, asking people. The bachelors were the best because they didn't need it or want it, but we were two little girls asking for something from a man. They were like, gotta keep little girls' dreams alive. They would just always buy. We started to learn to always go knock on certain doors and say,
Yep, that got. Yep.
Yeah. And you see in the background the stacks of cookies that are still there from the last time you were there, and they're like, "Yeah, I need some."
Right.
Well, it sounds like you've been kind of in entrepreneurship kind of like your whole life.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any one person or maybe a combination of people that were around you, or maybe the way you were raised? Like, how do you think you kind of got onto that journey?
Oh, what a great question. I was raised in a household where you went to a job for 35 years. You retired. You didn't play at life. And so, no, going into business was not acceptable per se. It wasn't the thing that, my parents would have been jumping up and down about. My mother and my father, I think, were wildly successful at the companies that, that they worked at. And my mom was a single mom. And so watching her climb the corporate ladder probably was the thing that was in my face the most. And so I wanted to be successful like my mother. My mother graduated from high school, started out for, the company that she worked for all of my life at 19 years old. She started out as a secretary. She retired with an executive level position.
Wow.
And, we watched her go to college our whole life.
Right.
We were the loudest ones screaming when she walked across the stage. Literally, they stopped graduation. All of her grandchildren and her children are screaming our heads off to the point that the rest of the audience began to cheer too. Because
That is
she was
amazing.
the oldest graduate and just the most distinguished one to our opinion. So that's the kind of, I think work ethic that I grew up around. And I think just my parents required something. My last name is Terrio. Well, my maiden name was Terrio.
Right.
And my mother was a cheerleader for our name. And she was like, "You're a Terrio, act like it." I don't know what the heck that meant.
Well,
except that she
I say
said
the
it.
same thing to my son. I'm like, "Son, you're Webster." And he probably looks at me and said, I'm going to have to go clarify. I'm like, all right, so here's why I say that.
Yeah. For her, that meant that you were great.
Right.
That people, she didn't have any sympathy for, they're talking about me at school. Good. Make sure you give them something to talk about, like
Right.
Purpose. That's my mom.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
did I answer you?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, you can definitely see the drive and the product that you are from what you've witnessed growing up. Would you say that your first real business was this photography business? Did you jump right out of college into it? What was your first real business adventure?
Ooh, I love this question. My first real business adventure was being a household manager.
Okay.
I managed the lives of mine and 7 other people. My first business was my household.
Ooh.
And it was my
that.
business to make sure that my children became something. And, I always joke that, at the end of the summer, parents are like, yay, summer's over, kids are going back to school. And I'm like, oh, my kids are leaving. Because they were my product.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is before Cupcake Collection starts.
Yeah, this is before the Cupcake Collection, years before the Cupcake Collection.
Right. You were how many children?
I have 7. I like to say it like this, 6 plus 1.
Wow.
And now I have 6 grandchildren as of last Wednesday.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Well, so let's just take this aspect then. If running your home was your first business, because I love hearing a new way to look at that. What were the struggles of running that business?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It was about making ends meet, which is how the Cupcake Collection ended up coming into play. It was about making sure I was tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
Listen, I was the room mom at school so that I could go on the field trip for free so that my children wouldn't have to do some of the things that were required by money. They'd have their mom.
Wow.
I did things to be a part of the decision making and that sort of thing so that my children wouldn't have to be left out. When I started the Cupcake Collection, I started it for field trip money. My daughter was a senior. She was a basketball manager. She had run track and just so many things that she would just drop out of because it's like, I don't want to put that burden on my parents. We can't afford that.
Right.
I didn't want that for my children. So I was listening to this guy on the radio who was telling people they could get out of debt and by having a bake sale.
Dave Ramsey.
Yes, that's my boy. I didn't know who he was at the time. I just turned on my radio when we moved to Nashville. I heard these people screaming, "We're debt free!"
Right.
And then, I wanted what they felt.
Right.
And so I started feverishly looking for what was this channel? Who were these people? Lead me to this tribe. And I started following the principles. And it was from there that the Cupcake Collection was born.
So before we get to that situation, so this makes a lot of sense. Now you're talking about making ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
What did that mean for you and your family? How hard was it? Because we're really trying to, relate to other people who start businesses or in your case start from absolutely nothing.
Absolutely.
And let them resonate with the idea that there were some very, very, very dark times we had to persevere through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and almost be able to latch on to that resilience.
Right, because we always have to go. So when you say making ends meet, I mean this is bad.
Yeah. We lived in Germantown before it was Germantown.
Yeah.
And we lived in that house where the Cupcake Collection is many days without electricity because we couldn't afford it.
Dang.
And we lived on a generator. So I would stay in the house during the day in the dark. Our house doesn't have windows along the side. It's got one main hallway that runs through the center. So when it's dark, it's
dark.
really dark.
Wow.
Right.
And I would sit in the house in the dark in the day so that when my children came home, I could save up the gas on the generator so they could have normalcy when they came home. This is 2005.
Wow.
So we're not talking about some foreign time
Right.
that was really long ago. This is right before the recession.
16 years ago.
And the thing about it is that we were in a recession before the world was. Right. So, we didn't always have running water. Like, we were living amongst affluent people, and we were living in a house that we had just gotten to a place where it wasn't, it may or may not have been still considered to be, what's the word?
Historic?
No. I'm drawing a blank.
Give me context clues.
It's not fit for humans to live in. Condemned.
Oh, condemned.
Because when we moved into it, it was condemned.
Wow.
And when did y'all move into it?
We moved into it in 2005.
Okay.
And it had 2 rooms and a half bathroom. And the half bathroom was a toilet and a tub. And the rooms, we had plywood floors. We had cinder block walls. And it rained more inside than it did outside.
Yeah.
And I just got my sense of smell back after 13 years because of the mold in the house.
No way.
And the polyps that, congregated in my nasal passages just putting this house together.
Wow.
I wouldn't trade any of it because I believe those things make me who I am. And it's also the reason why I'm so adamant about being transparent about my story.
Right.
Somebody's embarrassed to tell the truth about the things that they go through. I remember it was on a day when I finally gotten the store open. We were losing our house to foreclosure sale on the day that the Cupcake collection opened. So we knew that
she's
we were gonna
literally
lose it.
all chips in.
Yeah, we knew in December, the day that was going to the courthouse steps.
So let's back up for a second before we get too far into that, because that's awesome. I can't believe the amount of struggle that you've lived through, and then to see who you are today. It's an inspiration to be able to see that kind of stuff. So you're in the house. Did you move in this house knowing you were going to get into the Cupcake collection?
No, I didn't bake.
Okay, so you're in the house and you're sitting there in the dark and so how does the Cupcake collection begin?
And sorry, I have to stay here for 1 second because I have one deep question, and then we'll answer that. What does it feel like to walk outside in Germantown, knowing that you can't turn your lights on, and all these people around you?
That is such an amazing and poignant question for me. I have a billboard on the inside of my office that pinpoints that very feeling. I was walking outside in Germantown, and I had a conversation with God, like, God, do you love these people more than me? Why do they have what they want and I don't have what I need? And it just was like, what do they do that makes you give to them that you're not willing to give to me? And I heard God say, are you willing to put in what they put in to get what they have? And I was like, heck yeah. I was listening to rap music. I love Jesus and rap music. And I was listening to Kanye West and Jay-Z song. It's called Otis. And there's a lyric that says, they ain't see me because I pulled up in my other Benz. Last week, I was in my other Benz. And I was just like, God, really? He has options and they're luxurious, and I have nothing.
Right.
And, I realized that as I looked at those people, like the Beyoncés and Jay-Z's of the world, you never hear them saying it was easy.
Right.
You always hear them say they worked for it.
Right.
And I realized that work was required of me. And if I was willing to put the work in, that I too could get the results, which was what I realized. What I said earlier was, it wasn't that I was afraid to fail. It was that I was afraid to succeed, because that meant I had to go to work every single day.
Yeah, and what it was going to take to get there.
Right.
That's really interesting to me that you are kind of feeling like you're lesser than these people around you, and you're trying to ask God, which also I love the idea of just like questioning God and how like that's such a normal part of like if you are like trying to follow that, like you have questions for him, ask them. And so you're asking these questions, and then you're thinking maybe you might, like, I feel like if I was asking that question, I might feel like he would like tell me why or give me some sort of gratitude. And you kind of got slapped in the face with a sobering reality, like, hey, I'll give you the same thing. You just got to work for it.
Yeah. God says, prove me now in this. If I will not open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing. He didn't say it would be a lot. I will open up a window and pour you out one blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it. And I feel like my life is what that looks like. I'm so grateful to be living my life at this point. I'm grateful for the things that I've been through, the things that make me who I am, the things that teach my children who they have to be. I have a son that's been in business. We were talking about this at the Cupcake Collection the other morning. We have circle time in the morning. It stands for celebration, integrity, respect, community leadership, and excellence. And we come together, we pray for the people who are going to come into our business that day, what they're concerned with, what do they need. And so a lot of times when they leave, because what you come to the Cupcake Collection to get is not the product that you leave out the door with. You don't purchase what we're selling.
Right.
You buy cupcakes, we're selling something else.
Yeah.
And that's what you leave with.
It's just the vessel for you.
Yeah. It's just the way that we want to extract or package joy for other people to take. And I have a son that's been in business since he was 3. It was him who encouraged me when I was at my lowest. I was driving down the street. You guys are easy to talk to. I was driving down the street over in Midtown.
Right.
Back in 2008. And I had been toiling every day like it was a job for 2 years before the Cupcake Collection ever opened. And that's the other thing that I feel like happens to a lot of wannabe entrepreneurs. Maybe they should be called wannapreneurs.
Nice.
Is that you think it's going to happen overnight, and overnight success takes 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I was driving down the street. I had been at this business every day before the doors even opened for 2 years before it ever even came to fruition. And there was another cupcake place that just popped up out of the blue. And I screeched to a halt. And I looked at the sign said coming soon.
You're like,
and I started to cry.
Yeah.
I was like, really, God? I mean, you told me if I would work, you would do the same thing that you did for other people. And, you know, I've been working for 2 years. God, really? You let somebody else come before me? My 5-year-old, at this point, he was 5, taps me on the shoulder in the car and says, just because she's first doesn't mean she's going to be the best.
Dang.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Like,
Oh,
what did
it's
you
like-
just say?
So,
Yeah.
first of all, it seems like you've taught him very well. Second of all, it's like,
That's,
you hate almost
Yeah.
eat those words
So
sometimes.
I turn the corner and I stop again, and I start to cry again as I'm looking at the other side of the building, because I can't believe it. I was going to be the first cupcake place in Nashville, and we were going to set the tone for the city because cupcakes were becoming a thing in the world. And I'm sitting there crying, and my 5-year-old taps me on the shoulder again, and he says, Mommy, there's room for cupcakes. What I learned from my friend Juanita, she was the purveyor at a bakery called Dolce, and she was over at Edge Hill. She recently retired from the business, but when I opened my store, she came into my store and she introduced herself to me, and I cringed like, oh God, what are you trying to, take from me or whatever? And she said, I came to give you business. I came to buy things from you and just support you and tell you, whatever you ever need, I'm here for you. And it shaped me. It let me know what I had to do. So then when I saw new people coming into the business, I do the same thing to them that she did to me.
Yep.
Hello, welcome to the business. And people are shocked when you go in there and you stretch your hand out to give them something instead of trying to take something from them. And Juanita and I remain friends even to this day. I just admire what she taught me. You know, a person who knows that they're great isn't concerned about what you got going, you know, what you're going to take from them. They want to offer whatever it is that they can do. And so that's been my goal ever since. It's just to be a lighthouse in the community, to show other people what good business looks like, and then to light the way for other entrepreneurs to know what they can do if they believe. And I mean, for years in business after that, we would send specialty cakes her way, and she'd send all the cupcakes our way. And we do that and partner with other bakers right here in the city that I admire, like the young girls that Baked on 8th. I think they're so talented with what they do with in their hands. Like, I don't want to do that, so you can do that part, and I'll handle the cupcakes. You know, I'm a fan of Claire at Dozen and what she does. There's just so many people here in the city that do a really good job of pastry, and I don't have to be the only one.
Yeah, I love that idea of collaborating and bringing, like, that is literally what we're trying to do right now with this studio, since we just got it renovated. And kind of the shift in our mind was like, we've kind of tried to be super unique and operate on like a silo of like, we're going to blaze our own trail. And then we're like, good things happen when you open your doors to people who are like way more creative with you in their own rights and all these different things, and bring them into your ecosystem and see what happens. And it's just been beautiful. And like, having you here has already like blessed me big time. So now that I took that side trail.
I'm glad we took that. I'm glad we did, because that was really deep. But yeah, so let's get back. Let's figure out. So how did the Cupcake collection happen? Because obviously you guys, have been very successful, but you didn't start off that way. So let's just kind of unpack that real quick.
Like I said, I was listening to Dave Ramsey. He was telling people they could have a bake sale, and I thought, well, I'll just have one every single day.
So I've heard that philosophy that he's had. Did you just take it literally? You're just like,
yes.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
Yes, I've always been a little slow. To get it. You got to tell me things several times, but when it comes to making money, I mean, I used to play bank when I was 10. Like, that was my favorite game. And hunger will make you do what you have to do to eat.
Right.
There are so many people who work for food every day, and they don't stand on corners with signs.
Yeah.
And that was my life. And I would sometimes my children couldn't go to school because I didn't have gas to get them there. Yeah. I had found myself in this, neighborhood that had been changed. And so then the people and their influence were able to get the neighborhood rezoned just for them to the other side of town. So their children could go to the schools where they wanted them to go.
Wow.
And then the one that I could access very easily was no longer zoned to me, right? So my children went to this great and amazing, air quote, school on the other side of town, but sometimes they couldn't go to school because I couldn't afford to get them there.
Right.
So Germantown, can you give me just a quick landscape of that? Because I do feel like that cuts into kind of like the North Nashville, Jefferson Street. Like, so it was all zoned for something. And then the people with money and power could say, well, we want our children to go over here. And so they did. Right.
And so I'm in the midst of that. And, like I said, I'm not complaining. I believe everything happens for a reason. But my children normally would have gone to the school that they could literally walk to sometimes.
All their friends, went to that
school?
No,
I mean, we were all, my children were the only children essentially in Germantown. And so we're talking about people whose children are going to be coming along one day, And so the friends they made were the friends at school, which, were on the other side of town. But I'm just saying, there were many days that we didn't have gas to go to school, so we had to stay home.
Yeah.
And the guy on the radio was saying you could have a bake sale or a garage sale. Well, we sold everything we had that we could sell to move to Nashville.
Right.
So there was not going to be a garage sale for us. So what are we going to do? I'm not a person who's going to sit back and cry about what's happening to me. I'm going to look at what's happening for me and try to find a lesson. What I've learned in my life is you either win or you learn. There's no such thing as losing.
I would agree with that.
And so I'm going to look for the lesson. What are you trying to teach me, God? And so I had these 2 little girls who were awesome bakers. I couldn't bake, by the way, not even out of a box when I started the Cupcake Collection. And I believe it's, another testament to you can do whatever it takes to survive. Right. And I'm a survivor. And I thought they could handle the volume of a bake sale. So what I'll do is when they go to school in the day, I'll sell whatever they make at night. And I'm from New Orleans. We have a lot of small little houses that people, there's candy ladies who, make their living rooms in these shotgun houses into little candy stores where you can buy things on your way home to catch the bus to go home after school. Right. So I had seen this done before. So I thought I'll raise up the window on our porch. I'll sell whatever they make at night. During the day, and we'll just, keep that going. My daughter let me know she wasn't really interested in my little bakery idea. And she was going back to New Orleans where we were from after graduation.
So your first employee said she had wanted no part in the business.
Right. Yeah, my first partner wanted no part. My first partner wanted no part in the business. So without her, my little daughter wasn't interested. So now I have to learn how to bake. And so I called my grandmother on the phone. My grandmother didn't have recipes written down. My grandmother didn't have much of an elementary school education. I believe my grandmother went to the 3rd grade. So when I called grandma on the phone and I asked her for a recipe, she just told me what to do.
Right.
Pinch your fingers together, open up your hand, grab this much of this and that. She didn't even have words for some of the brands and the products that we use in this day and age,
right,
based on her time and where she lives in the country, right?
Wow.
And so I began to feverishly write down everything my grandmother was telling me to do. And in that moment, I had an aha moment. Everything that I had studied in college at Xavier University when I was attempting to go to school, to medical school, when I couldn't apply the science to the human body, all began to come full circle for me in that moment. And I understood chemistry 101. It just opened up for me. And I could see it so clear. This is what they meant by balancing equations. Because for a recipe to work out, the chemicals have to work out in balance. Right. And our lives have to work out in balance, right? And so I began to work on the things that my grandmother said, because sometimes when a person who doesn't have a recipe, that it's going to taste different every time.
Right.
Sometimes it's going to be better than others. And I knew that if I was going to open a business on this, I had to be consistent. And it had to be the same experience every single time. So I just applied science to what she said and balance to it.
All right. So you have your chemistry degree. You start making your own recipes on your own. What happens? Do you bake a batch and try and sell it? And what happens?
So I make my first successful strawberry cake, and I began to start making cupcakes for people when they moved into my neighborhood. And so I'd knock on their doors and say, "Welcome to the hood." And they would not really want to open the door for me because, they were scared because they moved to an area they didn't really know anything about.
Right.
And so they open the door. I don't want any. I didn't, I gave at the office. I'm like, no, I'm not asking you for anything. I came to bring you something. And so people would be pleasantly surprised that I was bringing them something with no ask in return. And so then they would come and knock on my door and ask me, could I make a whole cake out of that? And those began to be my first customers, those people who lived right there in Germantown.
Okay, so the first thing you did was go door to door, and then which you gave them this, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting concept of doing something for free.
It goes back to your childhood, though. Mm-hmm. Except there's a slight difference there. You know, you weren't really selling anything. You were just...
Never even put that together.
Yeah, you were almost... It's like, you know, as a child, you're selling, trying to get this out there. But as an adult, you're just trying to spread love and joy. Mm-hmm. You're trying to fulfill that promise. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
As a child, I was playing a game.
Right.
You were preparing. I was just like, I'm not athletically inclined. So, you know, I wasn't out there, you know, double dutching with the rest of the little brown girls in the neighborhood and stuff like that. I couldn't do it. So I did what I knew how to do. Yeah. And that was go make money. Yeah. So, nice. You know, yeah, that I never correlated that. Thank you so
awesome.
much.
You're very welcome.
Doing the same thing as an adult.
No, you've been preparing your whole life because he had a plan and a purpose for you before you were ever in your mother's womb. Mm-hmm. So like he had that whole thing kind of planned out. That's interesting. That's cool.
That's really good. I'm gonna go home and think about that.
Thanks for listening to the Three Cheese Podcast. If you're enjoying this content, then please subscribe, rate, and review. This episode was sponsored by our company, Mac and Cheese Media, a video company that creates scroll-stopping videos that drive results for your business. If you're a business owner that wants to accomplish your goals through video, then visit our website at macandcheesemedia.com. Now back to the podcast.
So, do you start making money now? People are asking you to, you know, make these cakes for them. Do you know how to run an official business at this point, or was it like a hobby you were trying to just make a little money and now it's like this might be a business? What?
Yeah, I didn't expect that it was going to be all of this. I literally would sell, you know, cupcakes and buy a spoon. I would sell cupcakes and buy a bowl. I remember my first major sale was to my neighbor across the street. She wanted to introduce it to all of her guests for the holidays, all of her customers for the holidays. And so she was going to give it as thank you gifts that year. That was going to be 600 cupcakes. She said, don't worry about paying, you know, get them all at one time because I can't take them all to all the people. So when you make some, I'll pay you. Well, when she knocked on the door, I was sitting with myself in the back of the house in the dark. And she said, why are you sitting in the dark? I said, because I'm meditating. Duh. You know, she was like, I'll let you get back to what you're doing. And then she gave me this offer. But what she didn't know, I was doing this Dave Ramsey baby step plan where you put your money in envelopes and try to snowball your way through your debt. But I didn't even have enough money to pay for shelter and transportation and food. And I only had $5 left when the door knock came. And I accepted the challenge and I closed the door and I had another talk with God. Like, seriously, God, I've been working at this for a really long time. You give me this opportunity when I have no money to take it. And God said, but I feed birds and they don't toil for anything. They don't store up in barns, yet they don't worry about food. How much more am I going to feed you who looks like me? All right. I put on my shoes and I walked to the Kroger at Monroe and 8th and I bought everything I could buy with that $5 that I had. And I went back home and I turned it into 60 that day because she did what she said she was going to do. She paid me for what I was going to turn into her. And sometimes, you know, when people say they're going to pay you, they mean kind of ish, you know, like 30-ish days. Like, no, this is not a net 30 account. Like, I need to be paid like net 30 minutes, you know. And she paid me like she said she was going to do. So I took that $5, I put it back into my bills, and I went and took the $55 and I went and made her more cupcakes. I turned that into 600 by the end of the week. That's when I bought my first KitchenAid mixer.
Nice. Wow.
And I thought that I wanted to line my counters with KitchenAid mixers. But God had a bigger plan for me than KitchenAid mixers on countertops. Like, I could literally sit in a bowl at the Cupcake Collection now because there was more for me to do than just to get field trip money for my children. He wanted me to get field trip money for other children. And he wanted me, because he could trust me with it, to tell this story to other people. So he made it successful so that I would get a platform, so that I would tell other people, hey, if you take your last and bet on God, you won't be sorry.
Right.
And I've been able to provide scholarships in my neighborhood. I've been able to make ends meet for other people when we now can provide jobs and careers to people who want to sow into this with us. We're really excited about a new initiative that we're working with Safe Haven. Safe Haven is the only family shelter of its kind in Middle Tennessee that keeps the whole family together. So if you're experiencing homelessness in Middle Tennessee and you're married, you don't have to be separated from your family. Men go to the men's shelter, women go to the women's shelter with their children. But with Safe Haven, they put families up together. And so I was driving down the street about a month ago. I saw a lady in my rear view mirror who had on something similar to what I had on. She had on some workout clothes, but she didn't look like she was worried about losing weight like I was. She had a sign in her hand that said, "We'll work for food." And I started thinking about, I'm wearing the same thing she's wearing, but we're concerned about two totally separate things. What else is she concerned about? Like, what is on her mind? What if her 10-year-old's birthday is today? And that food she's trying to work for is something to celebrate her with. What could I do about that? And so the Young Leaders Council at Safe Haven had come to talk to me about this program that they were putting together to do whatever they could do in the community because they're young. They might not have thousands of dollars to spend, but they could give up a cup of coffee, or, they could, not go get a haircut for, this month or something in order to give to some family in need. And so I wanted to partner with that. So I'm so excited to be partnering with them for their birthday club. And so when you sign up for their birthday club, you provide birthday parties for children experiencing homelessness in Middle Tennessee, and they get that cake from the Cupcake collection. And so that makes that money go further because we partner with them to provide that, and then they use that other money to buy some of the wishes that the children might have. And it seems like it could be, of all the things in the world that people need, people do need to celebrate, and they need a place to be able to say that they can feel good about wrapping gifts for their children so that their children can say, this is the thing that belongs to me. This is mine, and someone got it for me in love. And I'm so excited that our platform provides an opportunity for people to eat, people to grow, and people to be celebrated.
That's awesome. So I'm going to call your first leap of faith this $5 bet on God, right? To buy what you could to make this payment. Is there another one as you started to find that success, right? You started to, become a legitimate business and start scaling like you have. Was there any other moments along the way that were a kind of a large leap of faith that you had to take?
There have been so many. I think when I made the decision to move the Cupcake collection to New Orleans was a major leap of faith.
Yeah.
I wanted to write a love letter to the city that made me who I am, but I knew that even Jesus wasn't respected in his hometown, so that was scary to go back in. I'm like, well, I've had the success in Nashville. I'm going to take it back to New Orleans. They're going to love us, and they're going to be so excited about what their girl did when she went away from home, and that is not the way it happened.
Wow.
What I know for sure is that I am who I am because of the city where I'm from. I believe there's no greater city to be from. But I was New Orleans raised, but I was Nashville made. I could not be who I was or who I am without the support of this community. And I believe that Nashville is not a place, it's a time. Never again will these people be here in this city doing the things that we are doing together. 5 years from now, it'll be a totally different place with different brands, and different street names and different houses and different buildings. but it's what will we do at the time? We can't get back time, but we can redeem it. And that's what the Cupcake Collection seeks to do at this point in our life, is to redeem the time, to bring credence to the work of the people who came before us, the ancestors who paved the way for us to be who we are right now. People like my grandmother, who didn't get a chance to go to school and have an education because she had a family that she had to take care of. And so now when I look over my life and what it is that I've done with what's been, gifted to me, what will I turn it into? Well, you don't have to know those people's names, but you will know them. You will experience them because you will experience me. My sisters and I took a pilgrimage back to Terrio. And Terrio, Louisiana is where our name hails from. And standing in the middle of Terrio at a stop sign, is where Siri took us to, was a sugarcane field. And there were big machines picking cane. And the awe to be standing in a field where work is being done by machines, and our ancestors had done that by hand. And to know now we've turned little into much with that same sugarcane product. Mm-hmm. And to know that we now own our product and our labor. To me, entrepreneurship is true freedom, and that's why I'll fight for it. And that's why I'll fight to be a good representation of it. And that's why I'll fight to teach other people about it and what they can do if they believe in it. And so for me, it's about so much more than cupcakes. It's about leaving a legacy for the people who are coming after me, and then also paying homage to the people who came before me, whose sacrifice made it so. All I had to do was sit in a house without light sometimes. I would do it over again if it meant that I could sit here with you and tell you this story about a little girl who couldn't bake, but she only believed.
Oh, you told
me. All I got to say is that everything you just said in the past couple of minutes was like the best thing I've ever heard. Oh. It's amazing. Well, that was so well said. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. What type of inner strength and resilience did you find having to blaze your old trail, not given the same handouts that I have as a Caucasian entrepreneur? What would you tell some women of color who are trying to start these businesses that you had that made you be able to fight through all those barriers that were set up against you?
I would tell them that voice inside of their head that's telling them to do it is the Holy Spirit. I would tell them that the ideas that they have are not their own. That you don't have ideas, ideas have you. And that you were chosen for this responsibility. And that somebody else can do it. Anybody can do it. But you were chosen, even gifted, to be the one to do it. So what are you going to do about it? That's what I would tell them. If it were my own idea to be successful at business, do you think I would choose baking? I didn't know how to do it. Not even out of a box. Why would I go that route? Because God wanted to be glorified through my life. To say that it required a big God to accomplish something so big that I didn't like. I think about shoes, right? Tying our shoes. We keep asking God to help us tie our shoes. And he's like, no, I gave you hands for that. Ask me for more stuff. Ask me for greater. Ask me for things that I didn't give you the ability to do on your own. And then let me partner with you. I believe that.
Yeah, because he's not going to just give you a handout.
He's not. I gave you hands for that.
Right.
I gave you a mind for that. He wants us to seek him for things that are bigger than ourselves. And I think when it seems too hard to do, that's when you have to depend on a really big God.
It's like when you hit those moments where you're at this ceiling and you're like, for one, I don't know if I can continue going on. For two, I'm really uncertain of those steps. But I know what I was called to do, and I just have this feeling I'm going to push through this barrier. And I think a lot of times people fail because they don't push through that barrier. They don't push past those moments of uncertainty to really get to that next level of learning, because they're looking at the failure instead of an opportunity of learning from it and winning. Because they're not going to succeed if they don't fail and learn from it to take that next step. And that's awesome. I don't think I've also looked at it as a responsibility instead of just God blessing us. You know, your story, really resonates with me in the sense of, for a long time, I blamed myself and a lot of other people for the life that I had, and I couldn't understand why, God would bless all these other people. Like, why does he have a dad? Why can't I have one? And fast forwarding through all that, like at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that principle, but I've never put it in those terms. You either win or you learn, and I think, all the things that I used to hate, the world, my family, even God, those things that I hated, now I actually am like, you know what? I'm really proud of those moments, because they, one, made me who I am, and two, they taught me where my provision comes from and where I can lean on in moments of uncertainty. And through those things, I'm able to be responsible with the next thing he gives me. That's awesome. I like that.
Your business, Cupcake Collection, has incredible cupcakes, and you have an incredible culture. Like I said, we were like a few years ago when we were there doing our thing, you just feel this joy and overwhelming like happiness when you're in that store. So what principles have you let seep into that house or the business, and to your employees? What principles do you talked about your circle, I think, and what other things that make you guys so successful as a company?
Oh my gosh, I think that we know that it's not us. We know that we are dependent on God to show us the things that we need to do. And I would tell you that everyone who's on our team doesn't believe in God. We've had every religion and every belief, but it always seems to come back to God. The greatest thing that I tell them, there's a sign on the door when you walk into the Cupcake Collection, into the bakery side, and it says, always expect and require greatness, or don't expect to hang out with me. And I think that's one of the greatest things that they know. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, so I got to be learning things from you. And if I can't learn things from you that I can depend on, that I don't really want to be on your squad, because you are the sum total of the 5 people that you hang around with, and I'm trying to grow somewhere.
Right. Now, it seems like in the world today, so many people struggle so deeply with self-confidence, and that's something that you exude. How do you help people who come in and maybe they don't have that ability to summon that in themselves? What type of advice do you give them to grow them as humans when you have people around you that aren't as self-confident?
One of the first things you have to do at the Cupcake Collection when you join my team is you have to be able to know the meaning of your name. If you do not know the meaning of your name, you have not completed your homework. If you are a mentee of mine, anything like that, you cannot come back to another session until you've done your homework. And the first thing you have to know is the meaning of your name. The reason is because you will live out the meaning of your name or the adversary set up against it. For me, I didn't think that I was beautiful until I was 33. And because I thought that I was ugly, I didn't do things that I was called and purposed to do. So I fell back in times. Instead of walking in rooms and owning them, I fell back and didn't say anything. I later learned that my name means beautiful.
No way.
So God called me beautiful, and I said that I was ugly. I elevated what I thought above what God said about me. Because when you look back over in the Bible and you hear what people's names mean, their names were given to them by God, not by parents. And we are so arrogant to believe that we do anything by ourselves.
We want to control it.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you. I don't think I've ever thought to do that, and I just sit here and looked up my name really quickly, and I'm like, man, I need to hear that. my name means God is gracious. And I'm just like, yes, you are, Lord. That's good stuff.
Amen.
Hey, Sean, why don't you share an example or like an actual like story about how you see God being gracious in your life? Because I don't think anyone's really heard it on this setting.
I've never been a kid person. I'm not someone who grew up wanting kids because I didn't even have a dad. So I still struggled through a lot of like parents and what that whole thing looked like. So, growing up, it was just never thoughts like, oh, I want to have kids. It was actually quite the opposite. It's like, I don't want kids. Like, that is not me. Because I was a child for, I would say, up until I was about 30. And I think I have started to truly be able to understand the blessing of children and what that really means to be a blessing to them, to be able to pour into them, to have that responsibility, to be able to have that relationship, something that I feel the enemy wanted to take away from me as a child, because I didn't have that parent-child relationship. I didn't have a dad. I learned through forgiveness of him and forgiveness of myself, and then forgiveness of the things that I had done that had ended me up in a place of being a parent. And through all of that forgiveness and starting to learn how to, instead of failing at life, start learning from the lessons that I had gone through, I am now sitting here going, I have 4 healthy children that are, 3 of them that are in school. They're straight A students. They're in AP classes. They're on the debate team. They're in track. They do wrestling. They have a love and a spirit for God. They praise harder than I do sometimes. My youngest, who just turned a year old, man, she has radically changed me. And man, I'm kind of emotional right now, so I can't go too far in it. But it's, man, I am so blessed, and God is so gracious to give me the opportunity to be able to have that.
A lot of times I just have no, I have no space for sympathy for like people that have a pity party, for themselves. At the end of the day, it's just like there's always someone who is worse off than you.
Yeah.
And, it's like, instead of saying, why me, why not me?
Yeah.
Because, should it happen to you instead of me? Should it happen to him instead of me? Should it happen to them instead of me? No one wants unfortunate things to happen, but the Bible says that God always causes us to win. And so to me, that means that it's not over until I win. And so if I'm not winning, then it's not over,
I love that.
And I just really, really believe, that I'm going to win.
No, I needed to hear that. We're not winning 100% where I know we're going to be winning, but it ain't over yet.
It's not over. That means we still got a long, fun game to go.
That's the wonderful thing about Bible promises is you've got to know them so that you can claim them, right? If I know that you were going to promise me $100 gazillion dollars if I came into the studio, then I'm coming into the studio looking for my $100 gazillion dollars when I get here, right? The same thing goes with God. We don't claim the promises because we don't know what they are. But if we spend time with God and getting to know him, getting to know what his promises are, we can say, no, what you promised me was.
Call him out.
That I was going to have this or that thing. You said that I could have it. And that's one of the things that I teach my team. Well, what did God say he was going to give you? What is it that is yours that you get to claim?
Yeah, but we also have to know when we do that, we can't go in a wavering mindset. We have to know, hey, there's going to be work on the other side of it. And we're going to have to put shoe leather to the ground, and we're going to have to take that next step. And it may be uncertain. It may be hard. We may not even know if there's actually going to be something to catch us. We just have to keep going forward.
Yeah, he didn't say it would be easy, but it has been worth it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that when you're in it, though.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times people look at they'll just put you like the Cupcake collection. They go, man, she's successful, she's awesome, but they don't see that iceberg. They don't see what's beneath the surface. They don't see all the heartache, all the moments of being in complete like destitute, going like, I don't even know how I'm gonna feed my kids, like just living and hanging on those things. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, I want that, and it's like, if you really knew what it took to get it, do you really want it? Because a lot of times I don't think God gives us the end of the road because he knows what it's going to take us to get there. And a lot of times it's because we're stubborn. But he doesn't show us the end of the road because he's like, you won't do it. Yeah. You won't do it.
It's just like that time when I said to God, like, do you love them more than me? And God is like, do you want to work like they work? You never hear celebrities or wildly successful people say they're not working. Yeah. All you hear about is the grind. I would say that my story is very much like a story in the Bible of a widow whose husband had died, and her children were going to be taken into enslavement because of the debt that he left. And she goes to the prophet and says, what am I supposed to do? And the prophet looks at her like, what you gonna do? Like, you want me to solve your problem for you? What do you have in your house? And I think, that's what God is asking all of us. What do you have in your house?
I like that.
And she goes back into her house and says, all I have is a little bit of oil. He says, okay, go and get all of the jars that you can get, and then fill them up, and then come back. So she goes and she starts filling jars, and she reaches for another jar. Hand me another jar, and the sons go, there are no more jars. And the oil stops flowing. Yeah. And then she goes and sells what she filled inside the jars. Not only does she pay the debt for her sons, or her husband's debt and her son's ransom, she ends up going into wealth. Yeah. And that's my story. Yeah. I took what I had in my house. I didn't leave it to only what I had in my house, but I began to knock on the doors of my neighbors and to enlist them into collaboration with what I was doing. And they were willing to give me what they had, whether that was business, they were willing to give me customers, were they willing to give me reviews, were they willing to tell word of mouth, were they willing to give the words out of their mouth? And it was according to her faith that she was blessed. And that's the thing I feel like people miss. The Bible says, according to your faith, be it unto you. If she had only gotten one jar, the oil would have flowed enough for that one jar. Yeah. But she got all the jars that she could get, and the oil flowed till there were no more jars she could fill. And I feel like that's what's happening in my life. God is continuing to bring customers and people according to what it is that we put into it. Right. And it's like, if we work, God will match us. He'll collaborate with our efforts to make them bigger and better.
I think that may be one of the more powerful statements to come out of like a room like this that isn't said by most entrepreneurs, because generally there's some sort of like weave of what their craft is that became their business. But you get a lot of people that says like, oh, look at, what do you mean me start something, me make money for my family, me make a bit, me go do, I don't have any skills. Look inside your house. What do you got in there? Mm-hmm. For you, you looked at your daughters and you said they can bake cupcakes. Okay, cupcakes. It is, because that's what's inside my house right now.
Yeah, what has God already equipped you with?
Yeah.
Or equipped your community with?
What is he already stuck in your cupboard that you looked over?
Right.
People want great and amazing things to happen for them in business, but they don't want to put in great and amazing effort. Mm. We want to be mediocre and expect God to do great and amazing things. And I feel like what has been one of my greatest lessons is to look at a different perspective. So I love to teach my team this. You asked me that question earlier. I love to teach my team this. What do the letters W, N, and O spell? W, N, O.
Own, but backwards?
Now, one.
Oh.
When you own your now, you will have won.
Wow.
And the thing about it is you don't wait to graduate from college to start. You don't wait to get a wife to start being a husband. You start being a husband when you're dating that dream, right? You start preparing to become a doctor in medical school. You don't wait till you graduate medical school to be a doctor. You're a doctor in residency. When you own your now is all we have. We think that when we walk out of this room that the rest of the whole entire world might have burned down while we were in here. There are no windows. We are in a soundproof room. We have no idea what's going on out there. But all we own is the time that we're spending together. And we're putting all we have into that. And the reason why I believe that touches the heart of God and makes us successful is because then we match what he did. God emptied out heaven by giving his only son. He gave us everything he had in Jesus to come and die on the cross for us. And then we want to be mediocre with our gifts and our talents. We don't even want to put our full effort forward to the thing that we say we want the most. But if we would stop waiting and start doing, we then match God's energy. And God can get and collaborate with that. And that's why when you own your now, you'll see victory, you will have won.
That's good.
It's about perspective.
That's solid. That's solid. Because I think that can apply to any scenario, right? You own your now, you win or will have won.
I think one of the proudest things that I can say for the Cupcake Collection is to be a place that's providing a living for, other people. I just literally wanted field trip money. I remember when we gave our biggest scholarship away and we found out that without the money that we gave, that student wouldn't have been able to go to school. There have been so many things that I have been proud of, like, being on the best ofs. And I know that I didn't know how to bake, not even out of a box. Oh, one of the proudest moments that I had at the Cupcake Collection, maybe this is for Mignon, is when I got a full circle moment and I got a chance to meet Dave Ramsey and his whole entire team. I got a chance a couple years ago to kick off their beginning of the year meeting to tell them what their work is doing when they are behind the scenes of this big, amazing machine that is telling people biblical principles about debt and living within their means. I got a chance to go and show them how they were making, an effect on everyday people's lives. And that was a dream come true for me. I was at the bakery. A tour food group had come to the neighborhood. And whenever this food group brings anybody to town, to Germantown, if I'm there, they'll invite me out to come and talk to them. So I went outside to talk to this group, and I was telling them about how I use this business to get out of debt, how I'm teaching other people about entrepreneurship. And one of the guys in the group steps out of the group and says, "Have you ever told Dave Ramsey that story before?" And I said, "No, but I really would love to be able to tell him, what he's meant to my personal life." And he said, "We're from Dave Ramsey's team." And they invited me to come to their, beginning of the year event. So I would say that was one of the proudest moments for me at the Cupcake Collection, was to give back just a thank offering to people who were using their lives in service, and it served me.
Yeah.
Have you ever, I just have to ask this question, did you ever get on the radio and do the debt-free scream?
I never got on the radio.
Girl, you got to do it. You got to fulfill it. You got to call in. You got to make the scream. You got to do it.
I probably should have made that call back when, I remember when I finally paid off my student loan debt. That was probably the biggest debt that I had. I never thought it would ever get paid. And I just, the feeling when you don't have the bondage of someone tying you down and holding you down and knowing that you can. One of my favorite things to do is to write checks. I love to write checks. I love to sign my name to them. But here's your money. I love to pay for the things that I get.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Did you bring any checks? No, I want to just thank you for, you didn't have to come on here. And I know that, you want to tell your story, but you don't have to tell it to everybody, and especially in a setting like this. And you didn't really come in with any premise of what this was. So I want to, number one, thank you for doing that. And number two, I know you do this so well yourself, recognizing where you came from, what God has blessed you with, and how you can bless others with it. But I think sometimes it's hard, no matter how big you get or how fast you grow, to really take a moment and think about these successes and how inspiring you are to other people. And so I want you to know, like, your story is one that truly, didn't just hit on a surface level for me. And the successes that you've had from absolute nothing are something that I want to hold dear to me as I go through life, period, and go, you know what would Mignon do? And you've shown it, right? You've shown it in that you were just trying to get out of debt, and you were just trying to give your kids a normal life. So you looked inside your house and you made some cupcakes. And now look at this.
And I want to thank you as well. I may not have spoken as much in this podcast, but I feel like that's because I was just a sponge to everything that you were saying. I mean, I literally was just everything you said was straight wisdom. I mean, it's amazing. I love you said your first venture was starting a family, right? And raising a house and everything. And there's a lot of parallels to running, a normal business, raising a family and everything. They run very similarly. And I love what you said about owning your now, because that's very important. And it makes me think I really need to focus a lot more on that myself, and probably as a business, because this, right here is what's so important, as opposed to what happened in the past, your regrets, or the mistakes that you've made, and also the things in the future, what am I worried about? Money, bills that are due, everything. It's it's okay. Just, right now, I find myself, even in situations like this, trying not to drift, to start to think about things in the future. And that's incredibly hard to not do. But when you sit in the moment, as hard as you can, it's amazing. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to the Three Cheese Podcast. We hope you really enjoyed this episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe on whichever platform you use to get your podcasts. If you have any thoughts or feedback, shoot an email to podcast@macandcheesemedia.com. That's macandcheesemedia.com. Find us on social @Three Cheese Podcast. We hope you have a fantastic day, and we will see you next time.